Welcome to the Political Insider, your daily dose of being kept up with what's going on in South Africa. And remember, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. We'll keep you up to date with the stuff that you need to be kept up to date with. So we're doing this on the same day that the ANC celebrates its continued slide towards irrelevance when they have their performative birthday party, this time in that thriving metropolis of Rustenburg in the Northwest Province. You know, it's hard to believe that just, when was it, a year ago, criminals, as we've learned in the Madlanga Commission, were prepared to pay millions to be at these parties. Now they can't even fill a school hall. This kind of shows you where the ANC is going. One of the important issues that will be perhaps not discussed, but that overhangs this birthday celebration, is the state of what has always been known as the tripartite alliance. The ANC has got an alliance with the South African Communist Party and the leading trade union, COSATU. Now, this arrangement is a relic of the past. It made a lot of sense when South Africa, when the new South Africa was born in our first election, for a number of reasons. Number one, the South African Communist Party was still relevant. It's now irrelevant, as we can see by, somebody like Blade Nzimande. You remember him. He's somewhere stuck as a minister, I think, of science and technology, which is a joke because the guy's a Luddite. But, that just shows you what kind of intellectual heft the Communist Party brings to the ANC. Now, remember that the Communist Party being part of the ANC is a relatively new thing. That only happened in the 1950s and 60s when both parties found themselves being banned by the apartheid government. So, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. The two organizations got together and gradually kind of merged, and now they're inseparable, but it's a meaningless thing. They're part of the same thing. It just kind of sounds a bit sexy, and maybe you pick up young chicks at a shebeen by saying you're a communist. That's the only thing that matters today. There is no longer any shock value or any political value in being a communist. But hey, let's not deprive them of their lapel pin, the hammer and sickle. That's still great. COSATU is a little bit more interesting because COSATU was a massive force in South Africa. And it was possibly the big driving force that led towards the changes in South Africa. And why was that? It was because of one part of COSATU, which was the National Union of Mine Workers, which had hundreds of thousands of members. And many people who have come into leadership within the ANC came in via the union leadership. One needs to look no further than President Cyril Ramaphosa, who was General Secretary of the National Union of Mine Workers, Gwede Mantashe as well. And we see those people in power now because National Union of Mine Workers and COSATU was so powerful in the 1990s. Well, roll forward to today. The ANC has managed to destroy unions by destroying the economy. We now have COSATU, and their biggest chunk of members come from government workers that work for the government anyway. They don't see themselves as union members first. They see themselves as members of the teachers' union or this union or that union. The COSATU tag is irrelevant. And those workers, as has been tested a few times, whenever any of these parties decides to campaign on their own, they get no traction whatsoever. A couple of years ago, NUMSA tried to start a political party. I think it was called, it's a beautiful name, the Social Workers Revolutionary Party or something like that. And I think I got a couple of hundred votes. And we see that the SA Communist Party has contested a couple of by-elections. And I follow these things closely. I think they may have breached 1% of a vote in one by-election, but they haven't even threatened 2% in any ward where they have contested a by-election. So this will be a little subtext to their birthday celebrations. But I have no doubt that the leaders of the Communist Party, Solly Mapaila, the windbag of note, the head of COSATU, Singizwa Losi, whose claim to fame was that when they were in the White House and being scolded by Donald Trump, she was in that meeting and said, no, we don't only just murder everyone in South Africa, we rape our grandmothers in the township. So that was her contribution. So I don't see too much happening from this. A lot of bluster, a lot of threatening, but the ANC will carry on its dysfunctional way towards irrelevance as it is anyway. I think that the threat of these people leaving the party should be treated with the same amount of seriousness as you would when a 5-year-old says that they're leaving home. Not going to happen. Still some blowback from the appointment of Andy Matibi as the National Director of Public Prosecutions. And now where it's kind of got a mixed response. On the one hand, there is no doubt that Matibi seems to have he would have been a powerful candidate, and everybody who knows him seems to be happy with his appointment. The problem was that he made himself unavailable for the things. That's why he was not one of the candidates. Part of the reason is that the chap is 62 years old. I know what that feels like. And by law, the head of these bodies has to retire when they're 65. So he only has 3 years in the job. And the question, comes to mind, what can he do in those 3 years? I suppose one could be cynical, but we've never known for cynicism on the Political Insider, and say he couldn't do a hell of a lot less than what Shamila Batoy did, because she took 5 years to do nothing, or 6 years. I don't think the 3 years, he can achieve something. And there's talk about them changing the rules, because perhaps if a guy is good, we've got a president well into his 70s, we've got Jacob Zuma still doing politics well into his 80s. Perhaps a 65-year one could be stretched a little. But the real question is the judgment of the president and the judgment of the people that he entrusts to make these decisions. Why go through this long, arduous and expensive process of shortlisting 32 candidates, and then out of that emerges the 6 best, one of whom is about to be disbarred, as the best people to run the NPA, the National Prosecuting Authority? Why do it if you're just going to go outside of the process? And then if that committee found that all 6 of those delegates were not competent to run the NPA, can we please see those reports? We paid for them. This is going to be a recurring theme. The ANC is still behaving like it used to behave when it had a majority, and they like to keep all the information to themselves and release only what they feel that we need to hear. We are your paymasters. We're the guys that pay for these kind of processes. We want to know what the thinking was. Why was Hermione Cronje, who seemed like a good candidate, not given the position? Why was she deemed to be unfit for the job? We want to know what the notes were on everybody. Even take somebody as flawed as Menzi Simelane. If the committee, the final committee that said he's not fit, we need to know, did they question how the guy got there at all? These are questions that we need to know. But the growing anger is towards the fact that Matibi has not been questioned at all. Had he been questioned, there might have been that one occasion when he did what with who knows who, and this might have come to light, and, we saw it. We saw it happen at the hearings where some of the candidates, one incident was pointed out to them, and suddenly the newspapers get hold of it. People like us get hold of it and say, is this person fit to be the National Director of Prosecuting the NDPP? So he was spared that process. So needless to say, he seems like he's fine. Well, we don't know if he's fine. We're all fine if we don't look too deep. So we need to get more questions about that process. The burning question is, does Andy Matibi have the stones to actually do the job, right? Or has he just been there specifically not to investigate certain cases? Will we never hear anything about Phala Phala? Will we never hear how Hangwani Maumela suddenly got to own 5 Lamborghinis? Is that what he has been brought in to do? We saw the appointment of the public prosecutor, Kholeka Kgaleka, whose first pronouncement was nothing to see here when it came to Phala Phala. That's what we need to avoid, is somebody being brought in to do one thing. One of the names that has come up already today, Menzi Simelane, was brought in purely to end the Scorpions. When Jacob Zuma put him into this position, he was brought in purely to end the Scorpions. His work was done. He was removed because he shouldn't have been there in the first place. So these are burning questions that are not going to go away. I want to turn my attention to my favorite city, Johannesburg. The good old Johannesburg Metro Council approved the writing off of 868 million rand in unauthorized, irregular and wasteful expenditure, and then applauded itself for this decision. It seems that the departments that stole our money or were responsible for the misspending of our money were Public Safety 531 million and Group Risk 337 million, which is the bulk of the money. Now, Public Safety is headed up by Dr. Mqini Twaku from the Economic Freedom Fighters, and Group Risk is headed by Sinawo Nkumalo from the ANC. Now, Public Safety, we understand, and Dr. Twaku is being put forward as this paragon of virtue. Well, he's just wasted more than R500 million. Group Risk is meant to protect the residents of Johannesburg from corruption in the council. You can't make this sort of stuff up, right? And yet they are wasting money. After a heated debate in the council, the chairperson of the Municipal Public Accounts Committee, Sepetlelo Rasaruta, who also comes from the EFF, ended the debate by saying, I think the committee did a great job and they need applause. And everybody then burst into rapturous applause and said, well done, comrade, and great, on we go. This just shows you how desperately we need the next round of local government elections so this charade can stop, so that we can punish people that steal 868 million rand of our ratepayer money while we do not have water in Johannesburg. We have electricity from time to time, and we have collected the most impressive collection of potholes in the world. We have street lights that work sometimes during the day, but not at night. We have traffic lights that only work, but not at major intersections. These local government elections can't come soon enough, and to every Johannesburg resident who watches this, please consider who you vote for in the next local government elections. Oh, goodness, 2026 is already testing us. But what we are going to see in 2026 is some interesting court cases. So, as we look forward to the year, there's going to be a big challenge on black economic empowerment. The good old BEE. It's going to came under pressure in 2025. It's going to come under greater pressure in 2026. And who's going to do it? None other than the lawyers. So we've got a Department of Trade, Industry and Competition that has been the place, the biggest, cruelest joke that the ANC has played on the country, has always to have people running the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition that hate trade, industry and competition. People like Ibrahim Patel, Alec Irwin, Rob Davies. These people literally hate the free market, yet they're put in charge of the free market. And the net result is that our economy will not grow and our unemployment will grow, right? And what did they do in 2024, before the last elections? They imposed new BEE codes. And one sector that was hit really, really hard was the legal sector. Now, we know you don't go to the biggest biker gang to start trouble in the pub. I don't think you start a legal fight with lawyers. Now, 3 law firms, and they're not little baby ones, they're the biggest ones that I can think of, Bowmans, Weber Wenzel, and Worksmans, have joined the other law firm, Norton Rose Fulbright, in contesting the new legal sector codes. Now, like the codes always say, they want to increase black representation, and of course, it's always around ownership of the firms, because God forbid that the comrades shouldn't have ownership within the legal profession. And the lawyers are just saying, we can't comply. It's impossible. There are just so many lawyers that we can do. Other than making the most junior lawyer a senior partner, we cannot comply. And it's going to see these top law firms go from level 1 rated BEE to level 6 rated BEE, which will mean it's impossible for them to do any government work. It's impossible for them to do any corporate work unless the corporate that uses them then decides they won't do government work, because then they won't be in compliance. Well, in any case, this goes to court in May, and it's going to be a doozy, because I don't think that the law firms who are bringing this action are going to struggle to get people to represent them. And, you know, a word from the wise. There was a wonderful song, and I'll paraphrase it. It says, you don't pull on Superman's cape. You don't spit in the wind, and you don't pull the mask off the old Lone Ranger, and don't get involved with lawfare with 4 of the biggest law firms in South Africa. But in South Africa, we don't necessarily learn these things. And of course, 2026 is going to see a slew of court cases against national health insurance, especially as Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, with his little sidekick Nicholas Crisp, try harder and harder to push on this piece of string. We are going to see a host of civil society organizations and business groupings taking NHI to court this year. There are a laundry list of legal defects with the Act, which was passed literally days before the last election. It wasn't passed because it was good legislation. It was passed in the hope that this would win votes, and it didn't. And at least 8 organizations have filed more than a dozen legal cases. The real big question is whether it just turns into one big overarching case, and whether this highly poorly thought out piece of legislation is challenged in its entirety and gets sent back. But either way, these law firms are going to be doing a lot of work. The government is going to be spending a lot of your and my tax money to defend decisions that are indefensible. It's going to be interesting. We'll keep you in touch on the Political Insider. Subscribe to the channel. We need all the subscribers we can get as we continue to build this platform. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you again soon.